everyone, and welcome to the February edition of Cat's Coffee Break, brought to you by the Children's and Teen Services Division at Baker & Taylor. February is a month about love and celebration. It also happens to be National Self-Esteem Month. As such, we thought it'd be apropos to focus this month's coffee break on celebrating diversity in Kidlit and the concept of spreading a little love and joy by making sure collections are as representative and inclusive as possible. Baker & Taylor provides many solutions to help you build diverse and inclusive collections. Our DEI analysis tool, powered by our Collection HQ software, will look at your current collection and provide insights as to how it reflects different areas of DEI so you can make more informed purchasing decisions. Our suite of carts tailored by our collection development team, as well as the Kirkus Collections selection list crafted by the trained reviewers at Kirkus, emphasize diversity as well. And our new publishing imprint, Paw Prints Publishing, aims to build empathy, empowerment, and engagement in young people by bringing original titles to market that feature diverse characters written by authentic voices. To learn more about any of these programs or offerings, please visit our website, cats.baker-taylor.com, or reach out to your Cats or Baker & Taylor sales rep for more information. We're also planning to run a session about this topic at PLA in Columbus in April. If you'll be there, please plan to join us. Now, it's time for our very special interview with two librarians who are on a mission to create more representative and inclusive collections, Wendy Bartlett and Mary Schreiber of Cuyahoga County Public Library. Together, they've written Curating Community Collections, a holistic approach to diverse collection development, now available from Bloomsbury Publishing. We were very excited to virtually sit down with Wendy and Mary to talk about the book, collection development, and diversity in libraries. Today, I have the great pleasure of speaking with the co-authors of Curating Community Collections, a holistic approach to collection development. Both authors, Wendy Bartlett and Mary Schreiber, are librarians at Cuyahoga Public Library in Parma, Ohio. Wendy is the collection development and acquisitions manager and genre fiction selector, and Wendy is the collection development specialist who selects youth and world language materials. Welcome, Mary and Wendy.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. We're excited to be here.
Great. Can you provide a brief overview or synopsis of your book?
We can. So the elevator speech for the book is we did all the diversity audits that various vendors were offering, did them all. Kind of weren't surprised by our results, but we're ready to take the next step. How do we serve our communities better? We also saw our economically disadvantaged and more diverse communities really negatively impacted by the pandemic in terms of they don't place holds, so forth, so on. How do we best serve these folks? And we know that's been a long-standing problem. That was not news. But the combination of all that, we were saying to each other, how do we do this? And so we came up with an idea called Community Collections, and we can talk about that a little bit later. But it's specifically how do we purchase? How do we change things in our ILS so that the books stick longer in a branch where there's not a lot of holds placed? That's the easiest way to explain it. But we wanted to go farther than that. So we started talking to some of our peer libraries about what do you do about after your diversity audit? And the answers were kind of like, I don't know, we do another diversity audit. We were like, now there's got to be more out there because this is a huge thing for people. So Mary walked into my office one day and said, you bored? You want to do something fun? Let's write a book. So we ended up doing tons of Mary did a lot of I did a lot of the research. Mary did a lot of the interviews. We interviewed public librarians, academic librarians, special librarians, and we did a lot of research. We've got a 16-page bibliography. I mean, we really went deep because we knew there'd be fantastic work being done out there by librarians, and we wanted to bring that together so that if you're at a tiny library, you can get something out of it. If you're at a library where they're not talking about diversity, to cover the whole spectrum. So it was an ambitious goal, but we sold that idea to our publisher, and here we are.
Yeah. And I literally walked in and was like, do you want to do this with me?
I was like, sure, why not? Because I have nothing else to do. That'd be great. And it was a lot of fun. We learned a lot of really cool stuff.
We did. That was, I think, one of the best things.
Mm-hmm.
And for the sake of potential readers, let's just say up front, you have a lot of experience working in libraries, correct? Can you tell me about your background?
Thank you. Yes. Mary, you want to tell a little bit about how you come at this?
Yeah. So I started in libraries actually as, well, we call them pages, but somebody who shelves, as a teenager shelving books. And then I was a children's librarian for quite a number of years in a variety of branches, some that were pretty small, some that were more medium-sized. one that was pretty high circling, different types of diversity within those branches, and at a time where it wasn't discussed as much as it is now, there wasn't as much being published. And then I started in the collection development job. It's going to be 13 years in a couple of months, which does not seem possible. But it's just, seeing that change with that focus on youth materials, even in the selection part, the growth in what's being published for youth and seeing even more coming for adults, then taking on world language. So it's nothing is where it needs to be necessary, but we're seeing things going, hopefully to continue going in the right direction. And it's been really interesting to be kind of part of that and helping develop that within our branches.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was in book retail for many years. I'm actually a career changer librarian, and about halfway through my working life, I decided to go into libraries, and I was the assistant director at Kent Free Library in Kent, Ohio, which is right by Kent State University. And that was really fun because it was a true one of the most diverse towns you'll ever see. People from all over the world, people from all just different experiences and races, cultures, religion, you name it. We had it like literally every 5 minutes you were waiting on a different person from a different background. It was just fascinating. And then I came to Cuyahoga in 2006. Oh my golly, that seems hard to believe. And I ran our Beechwood branch for about 3 years. And then I have been in collection development for about 14, which also seems like a good marriage. It seems more like 7 instead of 14, so at least it doesn't sound, it's not like I feel like, oh my God, has it only been 14? It seems like 30. It's the other way around. It's been really fast. But the fascinating part of my job is that we serve 47 community with 27 branches. And every time we go on a branch visit, there's a different story about how the community has diversified or changed economically, age-wise, racially, culturally, it's fascinating. It's fascinating. And we have incredible diversity within Cuyahoga County Public Library. So it's a daily part of the reality for us.
Yeah, and Cuyahoga is a very large suburban public library system. Will your holistic approach work for smaller, rural, academic, school libraries, or is it particularly focused on your peer libraries?
Well, yeah, the intent is that for the book is twofold. I would say that's a great question, and we were real conscious about that as we wrote it, because I came from a standalone, and I would often think, oh, well, of course, Columbus can do it. They have all this money and they're big and whatever. But particularly in regard to academic and special libraries and things like that, I think our assumption was that we didn't know anything. We kind of went on this journey to learn what to do. And so we really tried hard to interview people from, and I should say too, we don't have a particular approach that we're saying this works for, right? We're just like, so if you're looking at this kind of an issue, here's somebody who ran a music library. One of our best articles we found was a music library who did a big diversity audit and then took action. But it's applicable. There was one, it was a special library for a hospital, but some of the things they thought through, anybody could use, you know what I mean? So it's more, we tried to do it that way to get not just a wide spectrum of people. And Mary, I should let you talk a little bit about who you interviewed, because you were really intentional about who all you spoke with.
Yeah, so we did speak to school librarians, in particular, one who was more inner city, one who was in it was an elementary school, but it was attached to a university, a high school librarian, to get kind of what they're facing, because we see a lot in the news, and we know that how they add a book to their collection and what their policies are potentially going to be different than a public library. So we wanted to make sure we were addressing that, and that we were addressing it from people who had that experience. We also looked at academics, both librarians as well as those that are more in the education field of it as well, to see what they were doing. And people at public libraries that were not just like us, so that we could have people that were, from southern part of the country or the West Coast, bigger or smaller. We had somebody who was at a library in Mississippi and talking about, their branches. Some of their branches had a decent sized materials budget, but some of their branches had like $600-700 for the year. So how do you buy diversely, and how do you do that when you have very little money? So you get a little bit of all of that kind of woven in, and we put it, we called it Perspectives from the Field. But the end of each chapter are interviews with these different librarians. We interviewed somebody who worked in a Jewish library, within her temple. So you get all of that.
So one thing that I loved about the book was how you both came at it from a position of, we started out knowing nothing. Here's what we learned, and we're still learning. And I love that Cuyahoga enabled you guys to be able to do that. They gave you a lot of support. Do you have any advice for public librarians who don't have the kind of support that you had, that maybe are not encouraged or even allowed to diversify their collections?
Well, not to do an advertisement for our PLA panel, but I actually really thought about that reader the entire time I was writing, because we hear about this from friends and peers of, my library is just checking the box, and my library gives it lip service, but doesn't really give me any money. And, and we interviewed people who would say those kind of things. So how do you do it? How do you work toward how do you serve your customers right? And which is where all these librarians' hearts are, right? How do you serve your customer in the most right way, that's the most, validating way for them, when you have whatever is going on, strong anti-LGBTQ stuff in your community or whatever. So we tried to say that throughout the book. If you've got our CEO behind you at CCPL going, go, 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 you can do this great stuff. And here's a version of what you might be able to do if, you're a solo librarian with no support and your board's kind of ouchy or whatever, right? Here's a piece of this that you might be able to try, right? Just something that you can take away from that, because we were very conscious of that. Not so much that we were a bigger library with money. It's not a lot of it's not about the money so much as the culture or what your community's, temperature is around a lot of these things. So yeah, we tried really, really hard to offer some hope and offer some practical things that people could do that made sense and kept them okay.
Yeah, and I think the weeding chapter in particular kind of speaks to that. So if you are feeling like you're getting pushback on your selection side of it, maybe you start by focusing on weeding your collection and removing some of the stuff that is older, it's dated, it's maybe not the way we currently view a part of history, and removing, that, and then you've got a better place to then talk about, we need to replace parts of this collection, so maybe we're going to look at more perspectives when we do that. And so it's not going into your collection development manager or your technical services director or your library director and saying, I need an extra, 10,000, 20,000, whatever it is, to diversify my collection. But, just taking those steps to start making improvements without having a big shiny sign saying, I'm doing this.
So what was the most surprising thing that you learned while you were writing the book?
That's a great question. What was the most surprising thing? Do you have an answer for that, Mary? I'm trying to think. What
I guess somewhat surprising and not surprising, but was just how many really great things other libraries were doing, that like we knew it had to be out there. And like once we started talking to people and saying, oh, this is what the book's going to be about. And, and you just start, at least for me, I would start seeing like on Facebook or in my email newsletters, I'm like, oh, I didn't know X was doing. And it was just somebody who I'd met through an ALA committee or an ALS committee. and reaching out and saying, hey, can I talk to you about this for the book? Because you may just be starting a, they called it Rainbow Storytime, but they were doing an LGBTQIA plus storytime. And there aren't a lot of libraries doing that, but that was just a great opportunity to talk collections and programming. So I think that was just so fun to start really seeing where those examples were just outside of our library.
Yeah, I don't know if I was surprised about anything so much as maybe inspired by people that we spoke with. I spoke with a woman, my favorite interview that I did, because Mary did the bulk of it, but I interviewed a woman who was one of the first African-American academic librarians up in Buffalo, Rochester, one of those towns. She's retired now. She is the most fun, vibrant, amazing woman I've ever talked to. And to hear her journey when she was in there trying to make this right for her school library, in one way, it was kind of depressing because it's facing some of the very same issues that Mary and I face. But on the other hand, it was kind of inspirational, So I think that was the surprise to me, was just, Mary and I are really, as is Cuyahoga County, very committed to all of this. It was really heartening to hear from other people who are so deeply committed to the work as well. I think that was the cool thing that I maybe didn't expect to get when I went into it.
I'll tell you one thing that surprised me was when I read the special library interview that you did with Susan Kuzel. And she talked about how all the books are written about Passover and Hanukkah because those two holidays just happen to fall on coincide with the major Christian holidays. So I actually looked it up, and there are like 17 times as many Passover books as there are Yom Kippur books, and there are 32 times as many Hanukkah books.
Don't doubt that a bit.
Yeah. That was a great interview. That happened to be somebody I served on an ALS committee with, and just talking over dinner, and I'm like, oh, we need this perspective, because it's definitely not. We have Jewish populations within our branches, and we work hard to get books into the branches, but to have somebody who that's their lived experience, and really like stuff that like I knew. But when she's talking about, her kids come into the library and they want the Jewish Harry Potter, and it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And so that to me, like, that's something that as librarians, as collection development staff, that is part of our job, is to continue to make the case for not just diverse books, but diversifying across the genres and nonfiction. So we're getting more variety of storytelling on our shelves. And I thought she did a really great job of talking about how that personally affects her and the kids and families she sees.
Right. Yeah. So we definitely need more Yom Kippur books. Are there any other like major gaps that you all uncovered while doing your research?
I think one of the biggest surprises for me, and again, I was doing more the research and article end of things, and I can kind of understand why this was the real gap in studying LGBTQIA plus services or not in collections. And it's hard to do that because it's scattered throughout. It's harder to identify than say here's a Jewish children's book, right? And a lot of the academic librarians have done a lot of research on a lot of these different topics, which was wonderful for our book. But just overall, that was probably the one we had to dig the most about. Was we had trouble finding information about how we are underserving our LGBTQIA plus. You wouldn't believe that when you hear the book banning people yelling. You'd think that's all we have, but in actuality, that's really not true, and it's really hard to find good data on that. So that was a gap that I saw. What do you think, Marian? Were there any other for you?
I would agree with that, and honestly, just I think I'm seeing, actually, as I've been ordering the last few weeks, I'm seeing more diversity related to like disability or ability and neurodivergent. And that's a positive because there hasn't been a lot, and so much of it hasn't been necessarily great. And it's starting, that seems to be, I hate calling it a trend because it shouldn't be a trend. It should just be hopefully the new normal that we are working towards, is that's just a part of the selection we have, so that we can have that variety of representation. Because I do get asked for it from staff that say, we have, we do sensory story time. We have the families coming in. They don't want to read a sad story about somebody they just want to read about kids who, yes, they might, be in a wheelchair, or they may have some type of immunity disorder, but they're living their best life, and they want to read that too. So I think there's definitely still room for improvement there, but I would agree with Wendy on the research side of it, that that was definitely an area that there wasn't as much as in perhaps some other areas.
Well, one thing that you said in the book that really resonated with me was that libraries are positioned to affect real change in contemporary society. And I couldn't agree more. I think that this book is a huge step toward that. And
that's nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody go buy Mary and Wendy's book. It's out February 24th.
We hope.
Bloomsbury Unlimited. And it's fantastic. And thank you for putting this book out into the world to help other libraries diversify their collections.
Well, thank you so much. We hope it does. We hope it helps. And we appreciate you having us on.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for being here.